On February 1st, 1959, a group of young engineering students and experienced mountaineers embarked on an adventure to climb Goro Torten, one of the relentless peaks of the Ural Mountains. The team began their climb fully prepared and motivated. As night fell, they retreated to their camp tents. However, at the foot of the desolate mountain, with the setting sun, terrifying events were about to begin for the campers. Their tragedy would remain in the country's headlines for a long time, and its mystery would be preserved until today. Welcome to Clever Minds. Humans have always been driven by the instinct to conquer nature's relentless edges, steep peaks, and bottomless depths. This is one of our most basic exploratory instincts. However, this urge often leads those who chase it to an early grave. This ill-fated destiny was about to reveal itself once again in the desolate corners of Siberia. As we know, the Dyatlov Pass takes its name from Igor Dyatlov, the leader of the team who lost his life there. Before this name was given, the area was known by another name in the local language, Kholat Shachol, meaning Dead Mountain. According to the legends of the Mansi people living in the area, their ancestors believed that restless spirits inhabited this region. As a result, they declared it a forbidden and ominous place, warning their children and youth for generations not to venture there. According to the legends, if one entered this region without the necessary shamanic preparations, they would meet their death due to the troubles brought on by the restless spirits. Indeed, the history of the Mansi people contains many accounts of people who went missing or died in this area. However, these local myths did not affect the young engineers and experienced mountaineers studying at the Ural Polytechnic Institute at that time. The group gathered for a new exploration trip. The team was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old experienced mountaineer. He was a fifth-year radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. The other members of the team were also from the same school: 21-year-old Yuri Doroshenko, Ludmila Dubinina, Georgy Krivonyshenko, and 5 other friends. There was actually one more member in the group, 21-year-old Yuri Yudin. However, he could not join the team at the last minute due to health issues, and this small misfortune saved his life. He would go on to live long enough to investigate what happened to his friends. The team began their journey on January 23, 1959, from the village of Visay. This was, so to speak, the last boundary between civilization and pristine nature. As soon as they crossed this boundary, things began to go terribly wrong for the team. The weather worsened, they made navigational errors, and heavy snowstorms followed. After 8 days, the team arrived at the foot of the mountain, which the locals called Dead Mountain, and their fate was sealed. By February 12th, the families of the team members had started to worry. They hadn't heard from their children for exactly 13 days. As a result, the families contacted the authorities, and official search operations for the young climbers began on February 20th. After 2 days of search, conducted under harsh weather conditions and with limited resources, the first clues about the team were discovered on February 27th. Remains of a tent were found under the snow at the slope of Kholat Shachol Mountain. The experienced rescue team thought they knew what the scene meant. However, what they were about to encounter was far more terrifying than they had imagined. As the team approached the tent, they expected to find frozen bodies inside, but they were greeted by something entirely different. The tent had been ripped from the inside. The occupants had fled, leaving nearly all of their belongings behind. Even the stove and pots were still arranged neatly. So what could have caused these young people to panic and cut open their tent to flee in such freezing cold? The rescue teams followed the footprints that led away from the tent, which headed into the forest. Here, the first bodies were found beneath the trees. The bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonyshenko were found near the remnants of an attempt to start a fire. Their fingers and toes were completely frozen. However, the most surprising thing was their clothing, or rather, the lack of it. Both had died from the cold while nearly naked. A little further on, Igor Dyatlov's body was discovered in a semi-sitting position. His hands were stretched toward frozen tree branches, as if he had tried to rise and return to the camp in a final attempt to survive. Zenaida Kolmogorov's body was found stretched toward the camp, also inadequately dressed like the others. Rustem Slobodin's body was found a little higher up the slope. He had a small crack in his skull. However, after further investigation, it was determined that this injury was not fatal. The discovery of these 5 bodies only deepened the mystery rather than solving it. Yes, they had all died from hypothermia. But why had they left their tents knowing this could happen? Why hadn't they dressed properly? And why, while some tried to return to the camp, had others ventured farther away? As the rescue teams and experts searched for answers to these questions, the fate of the remaining 4 members became known, and the situation grew even more disturbing. Nikolai Thibault Brignolel, Ludmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, and Semyon Zolotaryov's bodies were only found in May, 2 months after the search had begun, when the snow started to melt. However, the scene they encountered this time was far more unsettling than the previous discoveries. Thibaut Brignole's skull was shattered. Dubinina's chest cavity was crushed and her tongue was missing. Zolotaryov's chest cavity was also crushed. Kolovatov had deep cuts on his neck. The official autopsy report stated that these injuries were caused by an unknown compelling force, and the case was quickly closed. An unknown compelling force? Was this the result of an avalanche, a bear attack, or something else? There were dozens of questions on people's minds, but the Sverdlovsk Medical Institute of the Soviet Union did not answer any of them. The report concluded with death from unknown forces and hypothermia, and the case was closed. Not only was it closed, but it was also classified as a secret document for a long time. It was never shared with the deceased families or the press. Only the official statements mentioned above were made public. The authorities wanted this case to be swiftly forgotten. However, contrary to expectations, it sparked even more curiosity. In the 1980s, as the Soviet Union began to weaken and eventually collapse in 1991, the documents that had been kept secret for almost 20 years were open to the public. With the advancement of technology, the incident was reanalyzed, and information that had been hidden from the public at the time started to surface. However, when the previously classified autopsy reports were re-examined, everyone was shocked. The deaths of the young climbers were not as the families had been told. Some intriguing findings in the report included high levels of radiation were detected in some of the bodies. There were crush injuries to the skulls and chest bones, caused by an extreme force. Internal organs showed signs of severe trauma, even though there were no visible external wounds. These findings led people to consider different possibilities. The first theory that comes to mind is the possibility that an experiment conducted at a Soviet military base in the area went wrong. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence supporting this claim was the rapid secrecy imposed by the Soviets and the closure of the investigation. Could there have been some kind of radioactive bomb detonation near the area where the climbers set up camp? Did this explosion trigger a panic, causing them to abandon their tents? While some died from hypothermia, could others have been severely injured by a powerful blast? This hypothesis seemed plausible, but there was more. The diaries of the climbers contained extraordinary and highly classified information, which seemed to suggest something beyond a nuclear accident. According to some researchers, this could be the real reason the Soviets were eager to quickly close the case. Mysterious flying objects in the area, or what we now refer to as UFOs. February 9th, 2045. We saw something strange and terrifying. A large, round, fire-colored object rising from the foot of the mountain into the sky. These lines came from one of the notes written by the Dyatlov group. In the area, previously known as Death Mountain, there have been reports of mysterious lights in the sky for years. The local Mansi people interpret these lights as signs of restless spirits, believing the area is protected from outsiders. Some legends even say that this was a place where angels descended to earth. Of course, these are merely folkloric tales. However, the events recorded by the climbing group on the night of February 9th may not just be a piece of local mythology. It is important to note that the members of this group were highly trained, well-equipped individuals. Interestingly, Yuri Kuroshenko's notebook also contained a similar note. We saw something glowing strangely. It couldn't be a star because it was too low and moving incredibly fast. In fact, Samuel Zolotaryov and Yuri Krivonyshenko even managed to photograph these flying objects. At this point, several questions arise. A group of climbers who shouldn't have been there, strange lights flying around them, and photographic evidence to support it? Could these young people have witnessed something they weren't supposed to? The possibilities are mind-boggling. Were the Soviets conducting a secret military experiment? Or were the celestial beings mentioned in the local legends real? If these beings truly came, could the mutilated bodies of the climbers suggest they were not friendly? Of course, more earthly possibilities exist as well. Another disturbing detail uncovered during the examination of the bodies was the orange discoloration of their skin. Color changes can be expected during hypothermia and the subsequent stages of decomposition. However, the orange color raised questions. Exposure to a chemical substance? Radioactive contamination? Things get even more complicated here. Because although high levels of radiation were detected in some of the bodies, the orange skin discoloration was observed in nearly all of them. This once again led conspiracy theorists to suggest either a Soviet military experiment or an extraterrestrial intervention. But in both cases, the mystery of this color change was never fully explained. The case is reopened. Due to all the unanswered questions, the Dyatlov case was shelved once again. However, the incident was never forgotten. In fact, around 20 years later, with advanced equipment and modern research methods, the case was reopened. And some believe this time, the truth about what happened to the climbers could finally be uncovered. In 2019, a Swiss-Russian research team used advanced computer simulations to recreate the accident. The results strengthened the likelihood of an avalanche. According to the simulations, the way the climber's tent was buried and the damage it sustained could have been the result of a small avalanche from the slope. However, the infrasound theory proposed by American researcher Donnie H.R. and Russian scientist Alexei Kokrin presented an even more intriguing possibility. What was this theory? The researchers found that the atmospheric conditions in the area and the mountain structure could cause winds to generate infrasound, sound waves with frequencies below 20 Hz, which are inaudible to the human ear. These sound waves could have physical and psychological effects on the human body, possibly causing intense panic. Could these sounds have caused the climbers to tear apart their tents and flee in a panic? Exposure to such low-frequency sounds can lead to dizziness, nausea, and panic attacks. This might partially explain why the climbers fled their tents in panic. However, it still fails to account for critical details like the injuries and radioactive traces found on the bodies. The official report by the Russian government. In light of all these findings, by 2020, the Russian government prepared an official report. This report, supported by both old and new findings as well as computer simulations, explained what happened to the Dyatlov group. The climbers were forced to camp in Dyatlov Pass due to worsening weather conditions. That night, a severe storm caused the formation of a natural Kármán vortex on the mountainside. As a result, powerful infrasound waves struck the camp. These waves had a profound impact on the climbers, triggering a hysterical panic attack. In panic, the group tore apart their tents and fled, only to encounter a small avalanche. Some climbers, trapped under the snow, died from skull and chest fractures. The survivors were exposed to the cold, lost their way, and succumbed to hypothermia. Igor Dyatlov tried to escape from the avalanche by reaching the trees but froze to death. After the storm, wild animals damaged some bodies, eating their tongues and eyes before they were discovered. And with this report, the Russian government announced that the Dyatlov Pass incident was officially closed. On paper, this explanation seems logical, but there are still unanswered questions. What did the climbers see before that night that made them write notes and attempt to photograph it? Could the infrasound really have caused panic? But what made them tear apart their tent and flee instead of simply exiting? What was the source of the radiation found on some of the bodies? And perhaps the most intriguing detail, why did the bodies turn orange? These are the unresolved mysteries of the Dyatlov Pass incident. What's your opinion? Do you think the incident was truly a simple avalanche tragedy, as the government explained? Or are there still hidden truths? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you know or have researched any other details, share them with us so we can all learn together. And no matter the outcome, we do know this. What happened in Dyatlov Pass was truly extraordinary. So extraordinary that it may just confirm the local legends of it being the land of restless spirits. If you're interested in similar mysterious events, let me know in the comments. I can cover such topics in upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. As I always say, if you enjoyed the channel, you can support Clever Minds by subscribing and sharing the videos. See you next week. Take care.